I will now call the meeting of the Public Works and Safety.
This is me. Yes, sir.
Roll call, Brian.
Here. Good. How are you?
Philbrook.
Here.
Markley.
Here.
Maddox.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Kane.
Here. We want to welcome everyone to this meeting. Public comment is welcome. Anyone wishing to speak on any item on the standing committee agenda may do so when the item is up for discussion. You will have 3 minutes to state your comments. Please come forward to the table and you will be recognized. For accurate recording purposes, we will ask all present to speak directly in the microphone. Bed roll call. Approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All right, there's a motion made in a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those, the same sign opposed, the same sign. Ayes have it. This takes us to our committee agenda. Item number 1 consists of a number of resolutions calling for a survey of land and various improvements. I turn it over to Mr. Heatherman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a fairly ordinary action on all major capital improvement projects that we will be taking right-of-way or easements from. This is a beginning step that gives us the authority to proceed down this path. These are all projects that are proceeding ahead, and I can answer any questions on individual projects if you have them.
Move to approve. Second.
Roll call on the motion.
Roll call, Brian.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Walker. Kane.
Aye. Item number 2 is a resolution authorizing Mike Tobin to act on behalf of the UG in connection with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment revolving loan fund. Mr. Tobin.
This is also routine business with the retirement of Bob Roddy as Public Works Director and my appointment as the interim director. This simply will allow me to sign the documents to send to them.
Move to approve. Second.
Roll call on the motion.
Roll call, Brian.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Walker. Kane.
Aye. That takes us to our outcomes. Item number 1 is an overview of completion streets given by Rob. Who's going to give this? I got the wrong name on here.
I believe this was intended for Rob to give. I know he's with Planning Commission and Board of Zoning. I don't know if he's
No, this
in between floors.
should be what, Mike for CMIP, or
Yep.
you're doing the,
Well,
Mike Tobin for CMIP?
That's the next item.
Okay, so we're gonna do the
we're going to go to the next item.
Please do.
Heatherman with mill and overlay. Or milling and overlay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we're here tonight to give you really just a discussion and information on the CMIP in the out years. As you know, when you approved the budget this past year, the CMIP is a long-range instrument that you guys have to move projects through the system. And 14 and 15 are, we're wrapping up 14, 15 is pretty well planned out, but this is to talk about 16, 17, 18, and 19. With your strategic planning session coming up, basically what we're doing here is with the handout that we gave you, or the bill just gave you right now, that'll be good information for you to have to move forward. Having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill to run through the PowerPoint. And Debbie is also here, the Deputy Finance Director, to answer any finance questions.
Thank you, Mike. So we're all clear when we're talking about the CMIP what we want, and this is the fun part of the job, is showing the pictures at the end of the project. The challenge is to get them done and get them paid for. When we worked through the CMIP with you all this last year and in every year, we have a lot of questions both about individual projects but also just the context. What our goals are, how we're doing, and also when can we add more projects and see more things get done. Some major considerations that came up in the CMIP this year. and Debbie could speak to these in more detail, is that we're standing at about $69.5 million for 2016 through 19 for street, bridge, and facility type projects. If you average that out, that'd be about $17.3 million a year, and our target, based on bond considerations and other things, has been to try to keep that below $15 million a year. So this is part of the challenge that we're here to discuss tonight. Many of the projects already in the 2016 and 17 CMIP are ones that we've begun work on. Resources have been committed for at least engineering, and generally once we start, we like to be like the train that keeps on moving. So projects, once they begin, we treat them as a pretty high commitment to carry them through. But now is the time to start planning for additions in 2018, 2019, and beyond. And as you saw in those numbers, it's not like we're sitting on a big amount of slack to add additions to, but every year is an opportunity for this commission to reflect on the priorities and reflect on the timing of what's been submitted. This is just a little graphic of where those numbers stand. And Debbie, I didn't know if you wanted to say a little bit about the finance part of this.
Okay. And we just put this graph together to kind of show where the current CMIP is in relation to our target. The last 3 pages in your packet are a portion of the CMIP document, and these numbers match up with, these are the the total for the city debt projects, which would actually be on the second to the last page of your document. So this kind of shows where we're sitting 2016 through 2019. And as Bill said, when we went through the budget process, our target was around 13 to 15 million, but we were trying to stay underneath that $15 million target. So this kind of shows you where, going into those future years, where we are and what modifications we might need if we want to maintain that target.
So one question that comes up is how have projects been prioritized in the past? Staff generally does bring a recommendation forward, and then through the various meetings and workshops we have in the spring, those get tightened. But the common themes from both staff and commission in the past that guide us are, we preserve our core maintenance funding. So the street overlay program, which you're going to hear more about tonight, many of those other core maintenance functions. A lot of our capital projects are really major rehabs. A lot of times when you see a project listed, that's a tear out and replace type effort. We're trying to preserve our core maintenance. And then the second is we're trying to leverage other people's money anytime and everywhere we get the opportunity. So we do our best to meet our share of, well, okay, I jumped ahead. We comply with the law. We do the federal mandates. Like it or not, those intrude themselves between item 1 and item 3. And certainly in the last 5 years, between the ADA requirements and all of our EPA requirements, that's become a factor that is no light matter to try to keep that second line item satisfied. And then we jump to the federal grants and leveraged funds and try to make the best of those that we can. Certainly we don't pursue a project only because we could get a grant for it. We always stick with projects that we, the city, do want and that meet the needs of our constituents. But then that being said, we try to leverage and try to look for folks to help us with those projects. And then, selecting neighborhood enhancements that are going to be fully funded by us. And I think you'll see in every year the CMIP we do manage to keep a small amount, but a steady amount going towards those kind of projects. That's been the philosophy that's guided us. If there's different weights or different priorities, that comes out each year, but that's generally how we've approached it. And then just a couple of special notes. The bars you saw were for the debt, and I would say that we're probably 90 to 95% debt funding these kind of major capital. We don't have a big pay-as-you-go or cash source that we're putting towards the large capital projects, at least not of this type. We do have Special Street and Highway Fund, which is a dwindling resource. You all hear about the gas tax and how the gas tax is not keeping up with inflation, and as how cars get more efficient, we're actually collecting less dollars per mile traveled. That's all coming down the pike, and it restricts what we get at the end in put into Special Street and Highway Fund. We also have the sales tax that was adopted in 2010. So there are cash resources, but if you look in our budget, a lot of those go to very routine maintenance, the kind of things that aren't even appropriate to consider debt for in the first place. The Western Fire Station at $4 million is in there. That's part of the reason why the spike in 2016. In reality,
Could you be more specific on which one it is? I believe it's Eights, isn't it? 123rd and Leavenworth Road?
I believe, Mr. Chairman, that that was the last one that we heard about. I didn't know that it was more specific than that.
But I think we need to be specific. You know, that's a pole barn, been a pole barn. When they annexed the place, they told the folks out west that they would build them a fire station. They haven't built them a fire station. I think it's time we do something about it.
But also, I think that project will be part of the fire study that's being conducted, and probably will come out of that. I don't know how serious the actual funding was for 2016. You know, sometimes those out years have been used as placeholders for projects. So,
Commissioner, can I ask a question?
Yes.
and that's up to you guys anyway.
What other Western Fire Station were you?
Well, there's other. You got the
Yeah,
one
but
on State Avenue. You've got the
State and, well, you mean it, the
90,
new one?
yeah, the 94th State. You've got the ones down there in Edwardsville, which we don't have yet. There's also one on 80-something in Leavenworth Road that used to be a volunteer station way back in the day. So there's a couple out west.
Okay. Did you,
Chief, did you want to say something?
he stood up, so he's ready to talk to us. I could feel it.
Chief John Paul Jones, please come up here. Thank you.
Join the crowd.
Yes, Chief John Paul Jones. When that was put in the budget, it was put in as an additional, added a new station, not as a replacement for Eights, hence the Western Area Fire Station. And that was to address the issue of response times out in the Piper area. And so that when we initially put that in, I think originally it was scheduled, showed up in 15 and was pushed out to 16. But the reason it doesn't say a replacement for number 8s is because we looked at the situation as a standard of cover issue and to address the response time issue in western Wyandotte County as far as that area, that we considered it an additional fire station to the number that we have now.
Yes.
Chief, do you know when the fire station in the Highland Crest area, I forget the number of it, was built?
I believe there's, if you're talking about 16, well, the Highland Crest area is 51st and Matney.
Right.
I believe that station was actually a township fire station that was built in the 1950s.
Well, just so the record's clear, that whole area was annexed in 1966, and we too were promised a new fire station for which we're still waiting. We have one on 55th Street that I don't know what size of truck you have in there, but there's not room for more than one. So there are plenty of places where we need fire stations. Correct, Commissioner Markley?
That's right.
I'd have to agree with that.
And
Well, we have multiple township fire stations that were annexed, you know, one of them being in the Piper area. But
I understand, and it is a pole barn.
But for clarification, when that was put in the budget, it wasn't to replace 8s. It would be in addition to 8s.
Well, that'd be great, and I think Mr. Tobin's right too. Once we get the study back, we'll have a better grasp on where the other one would need to go. So I appreciate that.
Chief, are you saying if we build a new one out west, you'll maintain the pole barn as a fire station?
We'll work with it.
I would say this,
We'll
that
improve the
it's a
pole barn.
complex problem in that that station needs absolutely to be replaced because it is essentially a pole barn. But that building a new fire station there would not address our response time issue that we have. that I think the first order would maybe to build a new fire station and come back and build a new Eights in addition to that.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
And then the only last comment on this slide was the recession is ending, at least as far as construction pricing goes. We're seeing that all this summer and fall in the bids that both ourselves and KDOT. So we were able to continue squeezing a lot in over the last 5 or 6 years when we had projects put forward. I'm afraid that when you see me in March, I'm going to be giving you some probably revised estimates on some things based on what we're seeing. So that's just another consideration. And with that, we would be open to any questions you may have.
I have a question. Okay. Mr. Heatherman, in the, in the slide about the projects being prioritized, number one, preserve the core maintenance. Are there any monies that have been moved out of that bucket that would be possibly found to be put back in there, moved into other project areas, or especially like the grind and overlay or anything? It seemed to me that the grind and overlay took a hit a year or so ago. Some of the monies were moved out of it.
I think if you look over a long period, some years the overlay program is richer than others. I think this last budget cycle was very difficult, and just in order to keep other key programs, we had to reduce it compared to the year before. But the entire CMIP for street and bridges is a bit of a balancing act every year. I would say that we seem to be continuing to put a high priority on the grind and overlay, and I believe that that's a very positive thing.
I would agree. Our city streets are the arteries of our city.
Also, Commissioner, to address part of your question, in the mini recession we had back in the 90s, at that time, part of the gas tax money was moved to cover operational expenses instead of being totally capital, and that trend has continued. We have never really reversed that and went back to the special county street and highway fund becoming all capital again.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Markley.
Thanks. So my question is one that I've repeated before since I've been here, and that's just that we know that we have to plan very far out. And since the commission as a whole has started looking at CMIP several years out, I think the sentiment has improved, but I think there's still a question on the commission as to how to make sure that these larger scale projects are on the list, quote unquote. And in the past, the response that I've been given has sort of been, well, we're aware of the problems and the list is sort of in our heads. So again, I would appeal to Public Works staff to find a way to, not externally, not something we necessarily put on the website, but to be able to internally track the things that commissioners are saying they'd like to have on that long-term list. Because as you're talking and saying we need to be planning for 2018 and 2019, that's not something that we're seeing on the CMIP list that we're getting today. We're seeing a few years out, but not necessarily that far out. So if commissioners are thinking in 2019, I want to see this project taking off, it's too late really for them to start that process now, or it's getting too late as you have planning and engineering and things like that need to happen. So I think commissioners want to be partners in helping decide which projects are a priority, but because we plan so far out, we really need your help to start to think about those things and to start to that list of projects and to make sure that we're all on the same page before we've passed the point of no return and we're not able to move forward with the project that we think is a priority.
Commissioner Kilberg.
Yeah, I just want to second that. I know we said that when we were talking about this the last time, requesting that those things that were put on the list, that they not get dropped and lost, because there was no official list. So we're asking for an official list, please.
An official, unofficial list.
Are there any other questions? This item is for information only and does not require action. Our last item is with Joe Connor.
We do also have the NSRP update, which we could do after Mr. Connor.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's next.
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Bill.
So keeping to the spirit of the little bit of information each month, keep the dialogue going. Last month we talked to you, we spoke with you about several recently completed projects, and this month we're emphasizing the 2014 NSRP program. I've got a couple folks from our staff here that I'd like to stand and be recognized. Wayne Moody, who's our Deputy County Engineer, and Brandon Grover, who's an engineering technician, who's handling our street maintenance and working with Wayne. And Wayne, if you could go ahead and come up here. If you ask me any detailed questions, he's going to have to answer them. We have about 1,400 miles of roadway, and depending on the year and the funding, 30 to 40 miles is a good target for us. Average cost of a mile of NSRP is anywhere from 80 to 140,000. The real big difference, rural roads, we can do a lot more for the money. When you get in town, we need to do more milling to keep the street elevations the same. On a rural road, we can actually put that extra thickness on top. And the ADA wheelchair ramp mandate puts a lug on the program, so we're in areas with lots of sidewalks, we have some additional cost. We find that the public starts thinking the road is ready for a mill and overlay about 15 years after the last time we've touched it. Our actual engineering target would be 20 to 25 years, and if you do the math on the slide at the top, you'll see that even that is a hope-for goal, not an actual funding level. So you're going to hear about streets needing a mill and overlay long before we're going to be able to probably schedule them up compared to all the other streets, and that's just the reality we all face. Here's a picture of some work that's going, South 35th Street, the overlay in progress. Oakland Avenue between 8th and 9th Street, and you can kind of see when we're in town, things are a little tighter. The work's a little bit more constrained. North 62nd Street, this is actually the milling operation, so we come through and get the road all nice and rough and uneven so people know that we're coming through. And we do use those millings. That's an actual valued resource. It makes good surfacing material, so that it doesn't go to waste. Here's a picture of a completed North 77th Terrace and another completed project on South 20th Street, 9th and Everett. There is, we get a lot of questions, well, how do we pick our sites? And I would say that we have a rule of three. We get input from personal observations, commissioners, citizen requests, and our public works crews, and we rank it based on actual street condition and need. We go out and do a look over of them all, traffic volumes, the overall network condition and need, as well as the input that we get when we do our annual briefings with you and the observations and the things you're hearing. And then we select based on a systematic approach the network and the funds available. This is just a picture of where the 2014 sites are. Good distribution through the county. Right now, we have nearly all of our ADA ramps installed. 96% of our sites have been milled, and about 55% of our sites have been overlaid to date. It is usually the fall when we actually see the majority of our work take place, and I know it's long anticipated. We would anticipate about 90%, 98% of our work that was scheduled for 2014 will be done in 2014. There are always a handful of sites that, due to utility delays or other practicalities that emerge, that we go ahead and carry over and don't actually do until the spring following. And we would estimate that there are about 2,000 residences where we have passed by or will pass by this year with the mill and overlay project. We do notice, we put parking notices up on the blocks as they're going to be mill and overlaid, and we also have our contractor put out door hangers shortly before. And with that, I'd take any questions that you all may have.
Any questions? Super information only, and now it will be Joe's turn.
Well, this is
Thank you all.
Thank you.
This is just a very brief update. There have been bids solicited for the fire study, and a selection committee has been selected, and we are in the process of scheduling, the meetings to start the review process by the committee. So that'll consist of going over the applications and then determining which ones you want to interview, and then interviewing. There's a little bit of a process left before we actually pick someone. So it's underway, and we actually have some documents in hand.
Any questions?
Do we have a timeline really on that?
No, we're depending on the consultants to tell us what their timeline is, and that'll be part of our evaluation. We didn't set that for them. They're going to tell us.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Well, if that's it, it's for information only. This adjourns our meeting.
We have about 5 minutes before we can officially start the next meeting, so take a break.
That was
A seat also would be helpful for our recording purposes. I will now call this meeting of the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. We want to welcome everyone to this meeting. Public comment is welcome. Anyone wishing to speak on any item on the Standing Committee agenda may do so when the item is up for discussion. You will have 3 minutes to state your comments. You'll come forward to the table, or to the microphones. You'll be recognized for accurate recording purposes. We ask all present to speak directly into a microphone. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Gilbert,
Here.
Kane,
Here.
Adams,
Here.
Walker,
Here.
Markham.
Here. Next, we have the minutes from our August 25th meeting.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The minutes have been approved. Which takes us to our first item. Item 1 is a grant for the Willow Comes to Wick. I'll recognize Terry Breckeisen, our interim public health director.
This is a $1,000 grant to show kids how to eat fruits and vegetables in a fun fashion and prepare recipes and stuff. And so it's $1,000 to take place over, we spend it out in a year buying food and show the kids how to eat foods when they're at the, come for their WIC appointment.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Roll call.
Roll call, Gilbert,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Adams,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Markham.
Aye. And Terry is going to talk to us now about a grant for community-based solutions to reduce chronic disease.
This is a little bit bigger grant. It's an $85,000 grant from CDC through the National WIC Association for our Women, Infant, and Children program to help reduce chronic disease. CDC has put a lot of money into doing chronic disease activities. Their angle in this one is for it to come through the WIC department, which is a secondary angle for them is to promote WIC and how good WIC is throughout the United States, but to do interventions in the community to help reduce chronic disease. They weren't specific on this. What we had to do, they had a variety of choices for us, and it was, if you want to do some of these, let us know. And so we didn't have to pick them yet, but they were to change infrastructure like putting healthy foods in vending machines, increasing the number of community gardens and things dealing with nutrition to reduce chronic disease. And it's over a 2-year period.
Move for approval. Second.
Roll call.
Roll call, Gilbert,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Adams,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Markham.
Aye. Thanks, Terry.
You're welcome.
Item 3 is a review of the boards and commissions appointment process with a request for action by this committee. I'll ask Joe Connor, our interim county administrator, to present. As you'll recall, we discussed this item in a previous session and asked for some tweaks and for a return for action.
Sure, thank you very much, and I'm asked Jody to help me with this too if we have other questions. But this is actually the third time it's been back before the commission, the second time before the standing committee, and we think we've hit all of the questions and comments that were made from the previous meetings. Just as a short recap, this would basically streamline the appointments process. It would provide you with a methodology to recruit board members year-long, as opposed to when somebody first takes office or when there's renewals. We could have a list of potential board members for you to choose from. It also clarifies, when and how boards will be posted, the descriptions of these boards. So we'll publicly post all of these board members, minutes, all those different kinds of things, and clearly distinguishes the roles operationally so that it can be done now and well into the future.
Move for approval. Second, but I'd like to say something.
Thank you. I think that's going to bring us in compliance with CORA, so we'll have all of that stuff on site, so to speak, that we can come to and refer to. And I appreciate that, especially after having to listen to that information out there at the league meeting this week. And it's really important that everything be available to our community and with the open data. And so this is just one step that will really make it nice for people to be able to see what's going on in our committees and see how busy our committees are.
Thank you
Other
very much.
comments? If not, roll call. Oh, hold on. Jody has a comment.
We did discuss last time not making the terms of the board members concurrent with the appointing commissioner. But upon consideration, staff did want to bring that back to you, thinking that it would be much easier for administration to make the terms concurrent with the appointing commissioners, just because that expiration on the odd numbered years, they're going to get out of whack. And legal term. And so to keep it more orderly, we'd like the standing committee to consider that perhaps. Really, after the next step after approval of the suggestions is for the legal department to go back and change all the ordinances that create these the boards and commissions to match what you want. And so that is still one outstanding issue that has pros and cons both ways. And I know the commission discussed it, and we really were trying to create it such that it would, we think the standing committee did give us their consensus that they not be concurrent with the appointing commissioner, but we think it's worth reconsidering.
Administratively, Jody discussed this with me, and I'm sorry, Jody, I'm glad you brought it up because I had forgotten that discussion. Administratively, staff is afraid that the standing committee's directive is not practicable. Commissioner Kane.
So you're saying it'll be easier to do it the way you just suggested?
Well, we think so. No one can foresee the future and how it will actually work in practice, but that is what, thinking it through, that's the conclusion staff came to.
How?
So staff thinks it's going to be easier for a newly elected commissioner within 30 or 45 days of taking office to make a couple of dozen appointments than to spread that out over 4 years, where after a while they become a little more knowledgeable and experienced and perhaps know what they're doing when they appoint these people.
Some of them will expire every 2 years, so half presumably would expire when you're new, would be for the new commissioner, newly elected commissioner, and the other half would be later in that person's term. We'll try to make it work no matter which way you decide. It's going to be difficult. Either way probably will have its own bumps.
I think that the concern is that, and I've had this actually happen to me, so I'm sure it's happened to some of you as well, the concern is that tracking it when everything expires just randomly throughout the year. I've been told by one person, all your appointments are current, and then someone else on staff will say, well, actually, this one expired 2 years ago. So the problem is in administratively tracking. There are 10 of us plus the mayor. Some committees we have other appointments to besides the ones that we appoint, and for staff to try to sort of line everything up, that's, I think, what they're looking at and saying, they're telling us we're not sure we're capable of keeping track of everything to that level of detail if everything's expiring randomly.
Could we bounce that off the other, some of the other commissioners?
And there was some wish to have the full commission discuss this, so.
I think that'd be a lot smarter than having us make a decision for all of us. Maybe make that part of one of our executive sessions. Were you getting ready to say that?
No, they don't want to hear it.
They don't want to hear it again?
No, the other commissioners want us to decide.
Well, what'd they say when you talked to them?
Well, I think we did not talk to them, but Commissioner Markley was correct that they did delegate it to this committee and asked for a recommendation.
At our very first special session, we talked about this. This was one of the questions that we had raised, and so I think the issue was take it to standing committee, and so Commissioner Kane, that's where we're coming from on that.
I think Commissioner Philbrook is going to talk, and then I'm going to make a recommendation as to how we handle
Okay. To address the issue around having to find people, I think they did a wonderful job of addressing that issue of recruitment, because that's never been really seen before. This is a whole new thing for people to actually come forward, fill out, information and say they actually desire to be on a particular committee. And so that opens it wide open. It also gives us the opportunity to review those people and pick from that as a commissioner, where me first coming on last year, we all have to, when you first come on, you got to really do some shuffling around to find some folks that are willing to serve. And there's a lot of people willing to serve out there, but we don't always know about them, and they don't always come to us. So this is really great, the suggestion you've made there. And so I think that could help us quite a bit in filling those vacancies as we come on as new folks.
I'm going to go ahead and make my recommendation in case that impacts your thoughts. What I'm going to recommend that we do, and feel free to just tell me that's a bad idea, is that we make a recommendation as a committee to forward to the full commission, but when it comes on the full commission agenda, I'll pull it off and point out the specific issue to make sure the other commissioners understand what our recommendation is and what the other option that is being presented is, regardless of which way we recommend.
Well, that'll give them time to review it ahead of time anyway when they come.
Exactly. And Commissioner Maddox, you had a comment.
Thank you. And I don't know if I missed this by reading or not, but I had a question when this came up during the commission meeting as to how will the process change if a commissioner is elected and they'd like to appoint another person or someone needs to be removed. Is there a removal process that was enacted?
I think that depends on the committee and whether it's, and Jody, you can jump in and answer that, but I think some committees are more structured than others in terms of whether someone can be removed and how that removal works.
Well, I think what I took from the standing committee meeting before was that the terms would continue to be 4 years unless the establishing statute or ordinance has a shorter one, and a few of those do, but in general, it would be a 4-year term.
I think you stated before, because I'd asked about possible removal, and you had stated, that if the person doesn't show up
Right,
X number of times, they're automatically removed. There's things like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, and that's one process, but be it though a newer commissioner comes into office and there is no cohesion between him and the appointee, that was my question. Are you stuck having someone represent you for extended term?
Well, if you made the terms concurrent with the appointing commissioner, then those people would have the term until that commissioner is out of office. So if someone were not elected, a commissioner was not elected, then the term would expire in less than 4 years, or perhaps.
Are you making these like, we get elected in April and sworn in sometime during that month, and then these terms for these appointees are going to expire on what date?
I think we said May 31st, but it might have been June 30th. It was either the new term would commence June 1st or July 1st. But I mean, that's open.
Well, that would address Commissioner Maddox's concern. I mean, you're going to be, as a new commissioner, fairly busy for a couple of months, so whether somebody serves 2 additional months or not is not a big deal.
Yes, the fallback is that serves till the successor's appointed. So if you did not come up with someone right away, the holdover person would continue to serve.
So we won't have any empty positions then,
unless they resign and they're not filled.
Thank you.
We have a motion and second, don't we?
There was.
As long as the motioner and seconder are still in favor. And does that motion include Jody's recommendation?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And with the caveat that I will pull it off at full commission, and we'll make sure this discussion is presented to the full commission for consideration. Roll call on the motion.
Roll call, Gilbert,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Maddox,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. And thank you, staff, for your work on this.
And
I know
Commissioner
finding
Maddox,
all those boards was fun.
I had to happen in reverse. When I won, somebody resigned.
Doesn't work that way, does it?
Super. Item number 4 is a discussion of policy regarding ban the box nationwide movement. Commissioners should have received a blue sheet item on this, submitting a proposed ordinance for consideration, and Renee Ramirez is here to present and give us an overview of this policy.
Actually, I'm going to do the talking to begin with. You have before you, I think it's a blue sheeted, so-called ban the box ordinance, which has been drafted by the legal department. The ban the box is a nationwide movement, and if you look on the internet, you can read all kinds of things about it. The box that it refers to is the box that you find on many employment applications, which says, have you ever been convicted of a crime? Or have you ever been convicted of a felony? And the movement is afoot to try to get employers to remove that box from their employment applications, and also to take some other steps to consider criminal history more deeply when hiring. Our employment application does actually have this question on it. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? Yes or no? And it indicates in parentheses the conviction is not an automatic ban to employment. All circumstances will be considered. And then it asks the applicant to list the convictions on the application. The impetus for this ordinance and for this whole issue really is one of discrimination. The EEOC has come down a couple of years ago with a guidance on use of arrests and convictions and making employment decisions. The United States has one of the highest incarceration rates in the world, which is kind of hard to believe, but it's true. And those rates of incarceration are disproportionate if you're black or Latino. So employers who automatically exclude applicants based on their criminal history are disproportionately impacting blacks and Latinos. And as a result, the EEOC has gotten involved to make sure that if those decisions are being made, they're being made because of business necessity and not simply because there is a policy out there, automatic policy of exclusion. So much of this ordinance actually reflects the law as it currently exists and has been set forth by the EEOC. But it would have an impact on our employment practices, at least for all the departments that aren't specifically excluded from the ordinance. Section 2 of the ordinance requires the county administrator to revise the Unified Government's employment application to eliminate the field requiring disclosure of past criminal convictions for all positions except those listed in Section 6. So if this ordinance was adopted, we would no longer be asking that question on our employment application for most positions at the Unified Government. There are positions that are exempted in Section 6, which I'll talk about. On those positions, we would still be asking those questions, probably on a separate form that would be prepared just for those positions. So if we're not asking about criminal history at the beginning, when are we going to actually get a chance to ask? And that's set forth in Section 3 of the ordinance, that no inquiry will be made about the criminal history of an applicant for employment with the Unified Government until after the applicant has been determined to be otherwise qualified and has been interviewed for the position sought. So the idea is to take basically criminal history out of the equation until the applicant has had an opportunity to present their qualifications and to go through an interview and to be determined whether or not they're actually qualified apart from criminal history, and then at that point inquiries can be made into criminal history. So the way I envision this working is that for most positions at the Unified Government, if this ordinance passes, we would not be asking for criminal history initially. There would be an assessment of the qualifications of the applicants. There would be a determination to interview certain of the applicants based on those qualifications. And then once those interviews had been completed, at that point in time, we could inquire about criminal history. And it may be that we would have the individuals who are applying for the jobs complete another form at that point in time, disclosing their criminal history, and that at that point in time or thereafter, we could conduct criminal history background checks on applicants.
Commissioner Kane?
Okay, so the exempt ones are the police department, sheriff's department, sworn and civil positions, and community corrections and district attorney's office, but it doesn't say fire department. Is there a reason why?
The positions that are listed are ones which by law must consider criminal history in determining whether to hire. For example, police officers, you can't hire felons to be police officers. There are also similar restrictions for community corrections, sheriff's deputies. The district attorney indicated that he did not want to fall under this ordinance, so he is not under the ordinance. The fire department is a little bit different because they don't have anything by law that would exclude a felon from working as a firefighter. There are requirements under EMT and state certification that involve that, but once you've got a certification and have gotten past that, then I don't think it's really the same kind of question that you get with the police. Having said that, this is going to be a major change for the fire department, and Chief Jones may have something to say about it. In the past, this has been something that they have done up front. They have screened for criminal history, and that makes some sense for the fire department because they usually hire a large number of positions and have a lot of applicants. And it makes some sense to screen those applicants at the beginning of the process simply because they can cut some of them out and they don't have to interview all of them before they do that.
Chief Jones, could you take a microphone, please?
I was going to ask one question, legally speaking, as you're coming up. Go ahead and come on up. So with positions like the fire department, you referenced how these specific departments that are listed because there are statutory requirements related to them. Would there be legal problems with listing additional departments that don't have those statutory ties?
No, I don't think so. Not, you know, and let me emphasize that the difference would be mainly in sections 2 and 3 of this ordinance. The other sections 4 and 5 are the law. So any department is going to have to follow those sections regardless, unless state law or some other law mandates that you can't hire somebody because they have a certain criminal record.
Chief, if you'd like to address just the process, any process concerns you have with how this would impact your...
Yes, I think that, well, first I think a lot of other cities that have considered this have also exempted the fire department along with the police department as like a public safety, safety-sensitive position type of issue. As far as the process, this information becomes very relevant because it is considered safety-sensitive and you know, the public trust issue associated with it. Having the information earlier in the process is objective information that can be used to make decisions in effect to go through the process and paring the number down to a workable number within the process. We are, I guess you could say, very concerned that, you know, where in the process would we have this information, because it has to be considered. One would have to also understand that if someone's convicted of a felony, we're required to terminate them. As it stands for firefighters who are already employed. So it would seem that would be an issue that, you know, we would think that there would be an opportunity for a felon to come on the fire department because we would have to terminate anybody who was convicted of a felony. Now, as far as misdemeanor charges, et cetera, criminal history, you know, that's all relevant information in making our decision as to who we want to charge with that part of the public trust as far as being a firefighter.
Commissioner Walker.
I'm troubled by the blanket exemption for these departments that includes every position. For example, in the police department, they have a ton of civilian employees. I don't agree with the idea that because a person when they were young, these are not jobs that you have to generally start in your youth. Clerical work, administrative work, etc. You know, there are people, a great many people, that turn their lives around and never commit another crime. But because they did something when they were 18 or 19 or 20 years old, now they're 45, they pay their taxes, they can't get a job for which they're eminently qualified as an IT tech or someone else, even because we have this blanket civilian. I absolutely do not understand. There are positions within the organization which I am familiar that probably a civilian employee has to be, you know, trustworthy and be able to keep confidential information, but I don't agree that the civilian employees in any of these departments should be exempt from the objectives of this ordinance.
Are civilian employees addressed by those legal requirements?
Some of them are, I believe, maybe most of them. I think the chiefs can speak to that better than I can. But many of them are required to access criminal history record information, and there are specific federal regulations that govern whether or not you can hire individuals who have criminal histories to do that.
Well, and I'm not going to pick on the police department, Chief, but it used to, over the years that I was here, I knew for a fact that these young applicants would come in, otherwise eminently qualified for the job. And at some point, there would be questions asked about, well, have you ever smoked marijuana? And unfortunately, as a part of maturation, many of them would admit to it. And at some point, they stopped using that as an exclusionary basis for not considering, as long as the person, you know, hadn't, you know, been a habitual user, or, and maybe it was, you know, if you said yes to cocaine or harder drugs, you were out, but if it was marijuana, you weren't out. And you know, there are some offenses that are minor, that could happen to anybody, and maybe should have happened to some who just never got caught, that should not on the surface disqualify them. My fear, the reason I'm supporting this is because if somebody is not worthy of the job because of some past whatever, criminal activity, I don't think that should stop them from getting in the door to the point where there has to be some criteria by which you determine whether for this particular job the criminal conviction precludes you from doing the job. I think there should be regulations promulgated by the administrator through Human Resources that, you know, you got stopped in Lawrence when you were at KU and you got a misdemeanor citation for marijuana possession, and now you've got this drug offense on your, when in fact in Colorado that would not even be today considered a crime that you could even consider. So, you know, just taking a whole department and saying all our people, what we do is such that we just can't have anybody that's ever had a criminal conviction. I'm not for that. I will agree that I don't want felons being sworn police officers. I will agree that there are some offenses that a young man might, or woman, might have committed that at first blush would disqualify you, but there should be a method at a later point in the process to determine whether that is really a justifiable exclusion. Same with fire. You know, they got plenty of civilian employees that work for them that do not need to be. They've got, you know, mechanics, civilian, and non-sworn personnel that, whether they have a prior criminal conviction, may or may not be relevant to anything that they're doing with, you know, keeping timesheets or, you know, adding up numbers or preparing budgets. I think a person deserves a chance. A 45-year-old person that had an indiscretion at 18 who applies for a job under this cannot get a job at the fire or the police department in a civilian position. That's not right. I'm not going to support that.
Please, if we could maintain order, there'll be a moment for public comments shortly. Ms. Ramirez, I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak. We sort of skipped over you, but I want to hear your comments in response to the commissioner comments and also just your comments in general.
I also want to suggest that perhaps we hear comments from the police chief on the matter that Commissioner Walker just raised.
Absolutely. Renee, if you'd make sure you grab a microphone, put it right in front of you.
Well, good evening. And Commissioner, I appreciate some of your comments, but I have to tell you that in our profession, there is literally no civilian employee that walks into one of our police buildings that will not have access to confidential information that by law we cannot share with certain people that don't have certain certifications, haven't been approved through certain boards. So, you know, the fact is, you make a good point about marijuana. Actually, you know, that comes in a different category than most of the other offenses. But I will tell you, and you know from just looking at the headlines every day, a police department has a big challenge maintaining the public trust. And so we have a huge commitment. We hold people to very high standards, just as the fire chief explained. Once someone is on board, if they do commit a criminal offense, they will be terminated from employment. And so from our standpoint, let's get it up front. Give us all the information up front. And if someone has baggage, and if they're not excluded by the law from working there, then we need to know about that baggage as soon as possible in the process and make an informed hiring decision from the very beginning. Because I will tell you, for most police chiefs, well, if they're honest, they're going to tell you, if we have someone that has no baggage, that is equally as qualified as someone who does bring issues and baggage, we're going to hold the public trust and live up to our commitment to the commissioners, to our citizens, to make sure we don't bring any risk into the police department.
Renee?
I think currently at this time, the implications of this change right now are kind of premature. We haven't had the opportunity to really vet this out, and that's what we were looking for if this would pass. The time between now and January of 2015 would give us the opportunity to vet these kind of issues out to see what implications are going to happen on the back end. You know, originally the information is up front for us. Now with changing that in Ban the Box, it would be coming at a later phase of this. The one thing that I can see initially is that it will delay the hiring process further than what it is delayed today with having that information afterwards. So I think I would ask that we at least have the opportunity to vet these issues out and to see what kind of implications this may have, for our departments.
Commissioner Kane.
And we knew it would take you a while to make the adjustments, there's no doubt, and you've done this a lot longer than we have, so there'll be some modifications from going forward if this happens. First of all, I want to thank Commissioner Maddox for bringing this to our attention, You know, I had 1,000 questions when I first saw this, and I was nervous as heck. And the more as I walked through it, it sounds really good, although I would like to add the fire department for the same reasons that the chief said, you know, and then adjust ourselves accordingly, because I think as the police department, the fire department struggles with the community as well. And we always want to put our best foot forward, you know, not just today, but every day. So I would like to add, I would like to add that to this, if we're going to do it.
Are there other comments from the committee currently? I know Commissioner Maddox has a statement I think he would like to read, and I was going to allow him to do that and then accept public comments if that is the will of the committee.
How about if you read your statement and then I get a chance if I need to add anything?
Okay. Well, you'll still have a chance after public comment also. I promise. Commissioner Maddox.
Okay. Thank you. And first, I just want to say thank you to the staff and the commissioners who, you know, as Mike said, had a little bit of, you know, heartburn and questions, just people that are coming around and just kind of understanding the other side of the spectrum. I also want to say congratulations to the citizens who are here, even though the Royals game was postponed and it's rain outside. You guys still came in and made it here, so I just want to say thank you for that. And I do have an actual statement that I'd like to read. It simply says that Ban the Box is an ordinance campaign that is sweeping the nation. Local municipalities are passing similar ordinances monthly to create fair chance opportunities for felons. Most of these municipalities have three fundamental similarities: large urban cores, growing impoverished conditions, and large percentages of citizens with felony convictions. We too here in Wyandotte County share these same similarities. I've had the opportunity over the last several months to see just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Thanks to the groups and orgs, Equal Opportunity Foundation, the Wyandotte County NAACP, More Squared, Communities Creating Opportunity, and the Northeast Urban Advocates, who allowed me to adopt their ordinance campaign. Across WICO, statistics show that roughly 13% of residing citizens are felons. Many of those citizens reside in the urban core of WICO, where poverty is concentrated. This Ban the Box ordinance is not the sole answer to the poverty issue facing urban cores across America, but it serves as one answer and a starting point for creating opportunity for some who may have made mistakes at some point in their lives. What I learned from listening to the testimonies of felons is that Ban the Box gives them a sense of hope, a positive outlook on their job search experience. Many of them mentioned this ordinance provides a sense of confidence and positive feelings, having equal rights and a fair chance when applying for employment. One concern brought to my attention that stood out to me was that these citizens labeled felons pay taxes, just like every other citizen in WICO, and based on that merit alone, should be allowed to apply for employment that derives from those taxes he or she pays. I also learned what the main outcome of no employment means for most citizens with felonies, which is reincarceration, also known as recidivism. When there is no opportunity for citizens with felonies, most resort to criminal tactics for survival. This ultimately contributes to the revolving cycle of violence that continues to plague the urban core. Some felons sadly resort to suicide as a way out of what seems to be a never-ending nightmare of failure. I could go on, but I'm sure we get the point, as mostly everyone here has been touched in some way by this dilemma. Moving on, this ordinance being proposed today does not guarantee anyone, person, an interview or employment. This simply creates a fair chance for a citizen with felony convictions the opportunity for an interview. I trust and have been informed that after all interviews, any candidates for employment, felons or non-felons, will be thoroughly screened by our HR department to ensure that we, the unified government, hire the best candidate for the job. I also understand that by state statute, law enforcement, public safety is required to pre-screen all applicants before moving the applicant through our hiring process. Again, this ordinance is requesting UG staff to take the felon identification box off city job applications and to also screen all applicants thoroughly, who receive interviews to hire the best candidate, which may be a citizen who has made a mistake in the past. Felons who have done their time and pay their debt to society should have the same fair chance at employment as every other taxpaying citizen in society. I want to thank all my fellow commissioners who met with me and agreed that the citizens with felony deserve a fair second chance. Thanks to Commissioner Walker for your help and assistance with drafting the actual ordinance I submitted to legal. And I want to thank the legal department for drafting a similar ordinance with similar language to what I originally submitted. I want to thank Mayor Holland, who agreed also when I met with him that such an ordinance is appropriate to create opportunity for citizens with felony convictions. Thanks in advance to the HR Director, Mrs. Ramirez, who will assist in making the adjustments in HR that will ensure we still hire the best candidate for the job. Thanks to the County Administrator Bach, who has been in support of the ordinance from the very beginning. I'm excited to see what opportunities can and will be created once this ordinance passed and is approved. Thank you.
Well, I just want to add one more person onto this thank you list. I want to thank Crystal Watson for coming to me from the Black Chamber and talking to me about this issue. She was very articulate about it, and that helped me a lot. And the other thing is that I know that you guys meaning legal and the HR people, will be going through this, taking a look at each job to see what the requirements are and what, by state statute, et cetera, they have to have. So I guess I would ask a question. If somebody comes in, because what that means is there's going to be sections of people that can't be hired if they have certain types of felonies, and maybe people that can be hired that has felonies, you know, and you have all these different types of folks. So it will be interesting to see how you guys manage to fight your way through all of that, to determine how you're going to put together an application for employment, not to ban any more people than we have to from employment with our city. Did that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying? She's looking at me funny. Well, I guess what I'm saying is that I don't want people to unnecessarily, you know, get lumped into a particular section. If they can get a job with us, yes, and I don't want them to have to box, but only in restricted jobs.
I think the part I wanted to clarify and why I was looking at you like you were maybe crazy. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, good.
No, it was just that you said something about the application sorting those categories, and the whole point is the application process won't be able to. It'll have to be during the analysis process because there won't be a box
on any of them.
Right.
Okay. That's what I wanted to make
Other
sure.
than on the departments that are excluded by the ordinance,
that's
right?
what I'm asking.
Yeah.
The way I would envision this is that the question on the employment application will be removed. After the interview process, there will be additional, probably an additional questionnaire or something that we would be inserting in that after the interview and before a conditional offer of employment.
Commissioner Walker.
Yeah, I was going to point out we already have circumstances under which we make conditional offers of employment pending the resolution of a particular matter. You know, when you go to ban the box on the internet, there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of websites and you know, instances in which cities far bigger than us, far more employment opportunities have implemented this and are using it effectively. And I have every confidence that we're not reinventing the wheel here. There's human resource departments that are exemplars for how we can proceed in the future. And if Commissioner Maddox accepts the ordinance as it's written with the amendment by Commissioner Kane, then I'll go along with that. I think there should be a look down the future if really all these civilian positions are as in need of exclusion as we've been told, because they are also opportunities. But for the time being, if this is the wish of the rest of the committee, I'll go along with it as it's written and amended.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the ban the box with the restrictions here and add in the fire department.
Second. I appreciate the motion and second. We will allow them to hang in the air for a moment as we accept public comment. I'd like to first ask those in the audience, if you're here in support of this ordinance, if you would just stand, just to give us a visual.
Could we get a number on that?
I gotta stay there for a minute.
Yes.
Yeah.
If somebody,
Can we get a count on that?
somebody do just a quick count so we can include it in the record. It doesn't have to be down to the one, I guess. Our
By the way,
bailiff's
I've never seen,
multitasking.
in the 10 years I've been here, I've never seen this before, so we really appreciate you guys showing up.
Yeah, we want pictures.
Hold on just a moment, ma'am. About 29 in attendance for the record. And if you go ahead and sit down, if there is anyone here in opposition of the Ban the Box movement, if you would stand also.
All right, anybody in? Yeah, nobody in office.
Super. And what I just want to say is we are going to have an opportunity for specific public comments in a moment. But if your comment is really just that you're here in support, if you would consider this physical showing of your support, that statement, it's just respectful of everyone's time. If we don't have 29 of you coming to the podium just to say I'm here to support this, I would appreciate that. If you do want to make individual comments, I'd ask you to approach the microphone. You'll state your name and address for the record. Make sure to talk directly into the microphone because this meeting is recorded and that'll aid in our recording. You'll be given 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes. Feel free to use less to state your comments. So if anyone has specific comments, please step to the microphone.
And I also wanted to say this. There was over 350 signatures on a petition that was also turned in. And I just want to say that for the record for people that may be watching. I didn't get the actual petition, but there were signatures that were turned in. And there's certain people in the audience when they got those signatures, so thank you, guys.
If you'd state again your name and address for the record before your comments.
Sure. My name is Damon Daniel. I am the Regional Organizing Director for Communities Creating Opportunities. It is a faith-based organization that is part of the PICO National Network. Our Kansas physical address is 2013 North 7th Street. So I first want to just thank Commissioner Maddox for his initiative in moving this forward, as well as those commissioners present for also supporting this ordinance. CCO has worked with the City of Kansas City, Missouri, in passing a similar ordinance through a coalitional effort. We are also, as I mentioned, part of a national campaign that has been working with several cities and states across this country to do the same. Right now, as of 2011, there are 35 cities and counties, as well as 6 states that have similar employment opportunity reforms as you all are presenting this today. So again, I want to thank you for your initiative in moving this forward. Just a few things with the couple of minutes or so that I have left just to name, and I really want to be able to shift a little bit of this narrative. So there are 1 in 4 individuals, when you think about nationally, there are 1 in 4 adults that have some sort of arrest or conviction. When you look at that across the nation, that's about 30% of our population nationwide that have some sort of arrest or conviction. When you think about employment opportunities, that is a wide range of folks that are being discriminated against up front. As the legal department mentioned earlier, the EEOC, the U.S. EEOC has recommended and has made it a federal law that there has to be a strong nexus, which means a strong connection between the conviction and the role and responsibility of the job in which the applicant is applying for before someone is not considered for an application, or excuse me, for a position. So in one way to look at this, this is a protection for you as employers to not discriminate, right? And so this protects you from discriminatory practices in a huge way. So making sure that an applicant has an opportunity to go through that process.
Sir, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. Making sure an applicant has an opportunity to go through that process is extremely important. And before you say no to an applicant, making sure that that conviction that they have has a strong connection to the actual roles and responsibility of the job. So I would also employ that I understand the consideration for the law enforcement, won't touch that, but when I think about equitable employment opportunities, particularly when it comes to the fire department and other specific duties within and other opportunities within law enforcement agencies, I would employ you to really consider before you take that off the table, that remember what the EEOC says, that it has to be a strong connection between the conviction and what the actual roles and responsibilities are of those jobs before you just take that off the table completely. Thank you.
Your name and address before you make a statement, please.
My name is Bobby Love. I reside at 13804 West 130th Terrace, Olathe, Kansas. And I'm here tonight to testify on behalf of two organizations, More Squared, which has over 16 congregations on both the Kansas side and Missouri side. Stands for Metropolitan Organization on Racial and Economic Equity. And then also I serve as the General Secretary to the Missionary Baptist State Convention of the state of Kansas, which has over 200 congregations throughout the state of Kansas, and our local president resides here in Wyandotte County. And I want to say to the Madam Chair, to all of the distinguished commissioners here tonight, I'm very pleased to be here to speak in support of Ban the Box ordinance. We also want to let you know that More Squared has extensive success in its recent history in dealing with criminal justice issues, and Ban the Box is one, as you've already heard the previous speaker speak as it relates to the state of Missouri. It is our belief from the faith community that this affects especially the low-income individuals that have overriding or overwhelming consequences as a result of not being able to get a job because of these boxes being placed on the application. And from the faith tradition in which I espouse, I believe in second chances. One of the noted Apostle Paul, who spoke up on the behalf of a gentleman by the name of Onesimus, who once was unprofitable because of trouble that he got into, now became profitable because of the faith community working with him, that Paul could advocate to push him out to the community that he is now profitable and deserves a second chance. So again, I want to commend Commissioner Maddox for the fine, outstanding job and the courage that you took to move this initiative forward. So thank you for this opportunity.
Harold Johnson, address 2403 Nebraska Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas. Again, thank you to the Board of Commissioners and specifically to Commissioner Maddox for moving this very important issue forward. I am the pastor of Faith Deliverance Family Worship Center at 3043 State Avenue. We have members here with us. I'd like them to stand with me at this time. I'm also a board member of Communities Creating Opportunities, as well as one of the pastors of the Kansas East Churches of God in Christ. We've been working in the prison system for nearly 20 years now, and we have found that it was necessary for us to work to create a pathways to opportunity for returning citizens. One of our members here, Mr. Ray Wilkes, has created a business plan, a business model to help people because they were not able to find jobs anywhere else. He would bring them into his detailing, car detailing business, just to give them a fair start, and so that they can have a little bit to get them started until they could find something different that would pay them better wages. And so we're so happy to see this today before you. When people pay, when citizens return and after they have paid their dues to society, they come back and they come to our church because they recall the fact that we reached out to them. But what we find out so oftentimes is they need more than just spiritual help. They need housing, they need jobs, they need food, they need clothing, and so it's hard, we found, to help them to find a fair, decent job because of the fact that the odds are clearly stacked against them. And so by considering this ordinance, and it sounds like we've got some good positive influences moving forward, it's going to help to give those returning citizens another chance. And I would strongly encourage you to consider this ordinance and approve it because this is a step in the right direction, one that we've been working on for nearly 3 years, and we've even addressed this to the governor of the state himself to consider this very ordinance. So we're very happy that it starts in Wyandotte County, and we're looking to move this forward across the state of Kansas. Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening, Rick Behrens, 1501 North 83rd Street, Kansas City, Kansas is where I live. I'm pastor of Grandview Park Presbyterian Church at 1613 Wilson Boulevard, just a block south of Central Avenue. I'm also a member of More Squared, work together with Reverend Love in a lot of efforts, and I'm glad to be here and to hear so many positive comments about this initiative and to see it moving forward. I particularly was pleased to hear Commissioner Walker speak to the possibility of the fire department being involved in this. When you got a fire department that's 82% white in a 40% white community, perhaps this could help improve the diversity in our public safety. Some might consider this controversial. I'm glad that I haven't heard much controversy tonight. It's more controversial for a person not to have the opportunity to feed his or her family because they aren't able to find work, they're not able to share their gifts with the community, they're not able to establish themselves as a taxpayer and an employee in the community because of the boxes that they have to check. We also believe that ensuring access to jobs for people with criminal histories means, as Commissioner Maddox said, lower recidivism, which leads to less crime. Banning the box or removing the criminal history question off your employment application is the first step to making sure that people have fair and equal access to jobs. Having a job is the single greatest predictor in whether or not a person stays out of incarceration. More Squared applauds you for your considering this ordinance and urges you to pass it expeditiously. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Shivers. I live at 2702 South 46th Terrace, Kansas City, Kansas. I'm a resident. And I am concerned because of the fact that consideration is being given to including the fire department as a group that will be excluded from the requirement of the ordinance. I think that they should be included in the ordinance and that they should have be required to remove that box from any applications that they have. As was pointed out, 82% of the fire department is non-minority. The population of Kansas City, Kansas is 60% non-minority, whereas the non-minority make up 40%. So I think that in itself shows that they need to remove, the box need to be removed from any applications that the fire department have to give non-minorities an opportunity, to give minorities an opportunity to join the fire department.
My name is Lynette Cawthorn. I live at 6135 Sloan Avenue. I raised 7 boys in Wyandotte County. Some of them are preachers, some of them are police officers, some of them has felons. I feel that they treat animals better than they treat brothers with a felon. Okay, you get an animal, all of y'all will gather, Especially if somebody done something to it. Y'all gather together, put them in a place, give them a living surrounding, give them somewhere to eat, give them something to do. You get a brother with a felon, they can't feed their family, they can't pay child support, they keep going to jail because they can't pay child support. So why is this circle so hard for everyone to figure out? That would stop black on black crime. I mean, it's like, it's not hard to figure out. It's common sense. Y'all go home pretty, living in your houses, go home, wonderful. Oh, Britt, that's brilliant. But there's people in our community who needs a life. These African-American men and Mexican men need to be able to take home a paycheck to take care of their family, just like you're taking care of yours. And it's sad how you got to come to all of this just for y'all to understand that. Y'all take our tax dollars home to y'all's family, but these men can't take dollars home to their families. Prison is not going to help them. Going to jail is not going to help them. Get them a job. Let them take care of their families. They deserve a second chance, just like y'all. The SCORE team went in there robbing people, doing everything they wanted to do, but they get second chances. So all I'm saying is, let's get better at trying to help people that's doing stuff. You'll stop crime, you'll stop killing, you'll stop all that stuff. And it don't take a lot. It don't take a rocket scientist. All y'all doing is playing with tax dollars money. So let's jump on board, all of us gather together around and take care of them. Give these felons a job so they can work. They can work, they can take care of their family like you do. If they come home and tell you you can't take care of your family, look how you would feel. So all I'm telling y'all to do is do the right thing.
We do have a motion and a second on the table. If there are no further questions from the commission, I will ask for roll call. Roll call on the motion.
Roll call, Gilbert.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Maddox.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Bartley.
Aye. Well, I think Ms. Ramirez specifically asked for a little time to be able to look at it, so he was asking about fast tracking. He didn't say it into the mic, so I'll repeat it for the record. He was asking about fast tracking that item, but I think we want Ms. Ramirez to be able to answer any questions about procedure when it comes to full commission. So we'll just leave it timed as is. Thank you to everyone in the audience that came for that item. We do have one more item on our agenda, and thank you to staff also for your presentation. We have one more item on our agenda, which is regard to our outcomes. So as Mr. Criswell is getting set up, I'll just remind the committee. We had several goals assigned to us as a committee. This is our last meeting before strategic planning November 1st. And the one goal that we hadn't touched was with regard to social services. We discussed that perhaps the reason for that was we didn't really understand which social services we were providing as a unified government. So Gordon Criswell has done a great deal of research to be able to present to us a list of the social services we're providing so that with that information we can go forward as a committee and decide whether we have specific goals which we can put forth for the staff or whether perhaps this is something that should be dropped from our list of goals because we just want to maintain and don't necessarily have specific goals to present. So, Mr. Criswell, if you would enlighten us with regard to all the research you've done.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. The Board of Commission's strategic goal was to look at social services, and we attacked that directive by trying to just tell you all what social services our unified government organization actually provides, either in the way of grant funds or general government funds. So what you have before you is really a list of 8 departments throughout the unified government and the specific services that those 8 departments provide to the citizens of our community. I did some quick math earlier today, and those 8 departments literally represent close to $34 million in services that we provide through your appropriations to citizens in this community. And so they range everything from services to children, to services to the elderly, to services to folks who need community mental health and as well as public health, and it includes transportation. One of the things that we struggle with administratively was how do you identify a social service? And so we took some liberties administratively with what we consider social services that this organization provides. And again, just want to highlight that what you have before you are the services that are provided by this organization. It doesn't include services provided by United Way or any other nonprofits in our community or region. These are just the services that you all as elected officials have approved us to provide to our citizens. And with that, I answer any questions you may have.
So the idea of this is that as we come into strategic planning on November 1st, we may be asked to opine as to how this goal is going and whether it should continue to be one of our core goals. The idea when we put forth these core goals was that these were the things we wanted to sort of move forward, and in reality we haven't given staff direction to make changes or move forward any of these services. We've just asked them to maintain and continue what they're doing. So I wanted you to be able to review this list in advance of our November 1st strategic planning, so that if there are specific items that you'd like to put forth as sort of more goal areas, things that we'd like to change or enhance or do differently, we should be prepared to present that on November 1st so that we can move forward those items as a committee. If we don't have any goals for staff, I suppose we can leave this as a core goal, but it may be a topic for discussion whether this should be on our list of our top goals if we haven't put forth any goals. So I wanted you to have time to reflect upon that before we get to November 1st, because we have just not had any input into this area since our last strategic plan, and I do think part of that was a result of the same confusion that Mr. Criswell expressed, that it's sometimes difficult to pin down what social services are and what it is that we're providing. So I appreciate the research into what services we're providing. I'd be happy to open any discussion the committee has, and if there is none, to allow you to reflect on this so that we can discuss it further in the future. I hear crickets, so I assume that means that you're going to deeply analyze this information for future discussion. If there are no questions.
Well, I mean, looking through it, certainly there are things that you could say, you know, are more government. I mean, it's a fine line on some of them. I'm not.
Sorry, I have to be the microphone, not
because
the mayor's not here.
When you put the number $34 million on social services, it is somewhat misleading to suggest that all of these things are core social services. I mean, subsidizing transit, okay, it's a social service, but we have defined it as a governmental function to make sure we have public transportation.
That's a good point. There's a lot of overlap.
I think of social services more like the homeless, the Willa Gill, the free medical care at the health department.
Well, if you didn't drive and you were older, or not even older, it would be a social service for you.
Well, you still have to pay for it.
It's still allowing people to get to the doctor, to take care of themselves.
Okay, I knew this was a mistake bringing this up. I mean, I agree. What I'm trying to say is I agree with Gordon that this, if you're a taxpayer and you're saying to the public, we spend $34 million of public money a year on social services, there will be people that will misconstrue that. All I'm trying to say is that some of these are not just pure giveaways. Some of these are, I pay for a bus ticket. I ride a bus. If it's subsidized, it's subsidized. There's a lot of things subsidized.
And I think the point is well taken. And for those who don't, have this paper in front of them, some of these, they're categorized by department. So some things that we discuss as social services overlap with departments that we discuss separately, like transportation, like the health department and our healthy communities work, and as well as public safety, things that are happening in the police department. So there are, this list is broad.
Well, yes, and we had to figure out some kind of way to get our arms around the question you all posed. So to Commissioner Walker's concern about, there will be those who will say, almost $35 million in social services in this community is a big number. But what I did, I tried to keep things simple. I just went to our budget book, and whatever that department's annual budget was, that was a number I used. So that includes, I would assume, staff costs, that includes the cost of running the operation by department, and it includes those direct services that we provide to the citizens of this community. I will say that when you look at the list, it does create opportunities to think about how we deliver services and to actually think about the discussion that we just had, that you all just had about ban the box. Are there opportunities in how we deliver these services that we might put in place with your approval to actually enhance the opportunities that we just heard you all opine on? So that's sort of one of the upsides of having this information, is that it gives you a chance to more directly focus our limited dollars.
Further discussion?
Well,
Commissioner Walker?
Mr. Connor and I were just talking. Of the 35 million, it's clear that a substantial portion of that is federal money.
That's
not
true.
Local tax dollars.
That's a good point.
So, for the public that would see this, I mean, it's either take the money and spend it for the purposes that the federal government has decreed, or don't take the money and don't have the purposes. So, it's not a lot of local tax dollars.
And that's a very good point, and maybe for our strategic planning discussion, we'll call out, drill down in each one of these departments and actually have a percentage of, by department, what's federal, what's general government, what's state funded, to kind of help add some specificity to this large number, because this is just a large global number.
Further comments?
Question, will we have that ahead of time before we walk in on the 1st?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Even though I don't have our intern to work on it, I'll make sure we have it before November 1.
Well, the strategic planning agenda is actually not set yet. So whatever information is required of us, we will provide it.
Yeah.
If this is a part of it, then I just want to clarify that.
And I'm just assuming that at some point we're going to have a discussion of each goal, so that's why I wanted this to come before us before we got there on November 1st. But it may be that we don't spend very much time going over these individual goals, in which case perhaps we'll be discussing this at our next standing committee. Either way, I think it's good information to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is our meeting, when is it?
November 1st is strategic
It's like
planning.
a 20-hour meeting?
It's from
hope
8
not.
to 3.
That was my point for bringing up that.
7 hours was breaks.
I just wanted us to be prepared for the possibility.
Well, the
so.
union guy gets a break in there somewhere.
Are there other comments for tonight? If not,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know this was a big project.
Thank
And
you.
if there are no other questions, we are adjourned for the evening.
I get a 15-minute break.